Hello everyone and welcome to Test Drives presented by Mömus, makers of stuff for car guys, and we're driving the beautiful ATS-V Cadillac on the roads of Luxembourg here. As you can see, it's the middle of autumn and it's very cold, so I suggest we go inside and we head off on our test drive. This car really makes you drive fast. The car wants to go all the time. It's like it's on a leash and it's pulling constantly. And it's kind of funny that you also don't really feel how fast it is, because it is a very capable car. So if you're doing 90, it feels like you're rolling around doing 30. So you tend to drive it faster than you think. And then it also always wants to go faster than that. So it's really a car that encourages you to drive very fast. First off, I think the interior of this thing is very, very nice indeed. It's a very cosseting place to be. It's a very you sort of feel like you're going down the road in your own little bunker. It's very cosseting, it's cozy, and you feel well protected. The door cards come up high, almost to your shoulder level. That's quite ordinary in newer cars of today, but yeah, it has this very nice cosseting feeling, and the design of it is also very, very nice. We've got this center stack in here. It's sort of a waterfall design. Usually I'm more a fan of horizontal interior designs, more like Audis, for example, have now. It just gives it this more kind of like a lofty feeling. But this waterfall design is very well done by Cadillac, and it's kind of Cadillac's trademark at the moment as well. In the center stack we find the weirdest and most complicated center console electronics devices, AC, climate control and navigation that I have ever seen in my life. But you sort of forgive it, because it's that really nice design, and it's gadgety, it's very gimmicky. It has this hidden compartment in here that you just touch, and the scene of Tomorrow Never Dies, where James Bond puts away his gun in his E38 glove box just by touching it, is exactly what this reminds me of each time I open it. So that's very nice. Other thing that's very nice is the design works very well, and usually when auto manufacturers like Mercedes, Audi, BMW, they spend a lot of time now on the design of the cabin rather than the materials and quality. Usually when a manufacturer makes a nice interior, there are of course compromises, and in here, rather than materials and fitment, it's more the practicality and the usability. I mean, you have to touch the buttons and the panel, so you have to touch where the symbol is and on the little chrome trim piece underneath to make it work. And I don't know if it works. Sometimes I'm switching things off and my hand touches just by accident another part of the center stack, and something switches on or something switches off. The volume of the radio is suddenly adjusted, that type of thing. It is all very weird in here. But it's sort of that wonderfully weird that you want to forgive it, because it's so, it also has this nice futuristic look to it, you know. It's like futuristic from when I was young, if you know what I mean. Inside of the hidden compartment there's also this wireless phone charging that Cadillac came out with recently, so that's quite practical. That's the only practical note that I can say about the center stack, because also the interface of the whole navigation and the way that it's touchscreen and then some buttons down here, I don't know, I'm not that clever with the whole computer thing that I can figure that out so quickly. But we had the car for a couple of days now, and it's getting better and better. Then some more functions are in here in the board computer that are connected to that, I think. I'm still trying to figure most of it out, like I said. But again, you kind of want to forgive it because it looks cool and it's kind of like this futuristic look, and it's one of these systems that's not trying too hard to be practical when they're not, you know, like the old Audi MMI systems that were that everyone said from Audi, this is most practical, but it wasn't. It's just the way it is in here. It's good looking, great design for with the drawback of the little bit harder to use interface. One of these examples is that I actually had to consult the owner's manual of our test drive car here for resetting the fuel consumption. And I still haven't quite figured out how to do it. My current fuel consumption is 11, by the way, 11.2, so it's really good. But the way I see it, you can only reset for a certain amount of distance that you've driven. So you can reset, for example, your best score ever. You can reset, for example, for the last 50 kilometers or for the last 100, 200, 500. But you can't do a general reset of the thing. So, whoa! I was a bit in my lane. Back to the interior. The seats are the optional bucket seats, and I think, having experienced them on the track where they do give the support, but like I said already that day, they are a bit too cramped if you're there with your gear on, with your helmet and everything. And especially here, I don't know if you can see, but I don't have a lot of space. I would judge it to be 2 centimeters or something. So with the helmet that was tight. And in general, I sit a bit too high in my feeling in the cabin. I would like to sit a lot lower, which I'm gonna test the normal seat when I give this car back to Cadillac Luxembourg at Autopolis, and then I'm gonna test the normal seats, and I will let you know right now if they're better or not. So, to conclude, the cabin is a nice place to be, the interior is a nice place to be, and the part of the reason for it is, like I said, you feel safe inside and it's a nice place to be because of the design, but also because it causes you with these little electronic touches. When it's cold in the morning, cold start by the way is quite nice, and you can do it remotely. But then when you get inside, it starts the things like the seat heating and so forth. It adjusts the temperature to the weather, and that's kind of a nice thing, you know, that it feels like you're just coming home. Or in fact, it feels like you haven't even left home. You go out in the morning, you step into this, and it feels like you're still home. That's a very nice feeling. Then on to the drivetrain, which I already said in my last video about driving this thing on Spa-Francorchamps, the racetrack, that it wasn't my favorite. We've got the same car here. It's an automatic, again, 8-speed bi-turbo V6. I would recommend anyone buying this, to go for the manual, because the automatic, it's a good automatic when you're just toddling around, when you're we're in tour mode right now, which is like the normal mode or the cruise mode, and then it's fine. It's fine just shifting smoothly, shifting normally. It's not harsh. It's not it's not, how do you say, abruptly? Abrupt. It's not abrupt. But when you switch modes, or you start driving a bit more spiritedly yourself, then it can get very notchy, and then the computer gets confused, it gets slow. For example, you are driving fast, and then you come down, for example, you're slowing down for a traffic light, and the traffic light goes green again, and then you think, oh, I'll go back on the throttle, and it really does this jerk almost. It's a very unpleasant feeling, where the whole car shudders just because the computer was too slow to realize that you need a gear again. So that's a little bit unpleasant. So I would definitely say to go for the manual. And then the motor, the engine is still a V6. It's still not the best sounding configuration of engine in the world. And what they did weirdly at Cadillac is that when you're just driving around town and the engine is warm, it doesn't do it when it's cold, only when it's warm, you get this sort of vacuum machine sound just from giving it a little bit gas. For example, you're going uphill in town, then you get this sort of very weird suction, I don't know how to explain it, yeah, like a vacuum machine. That's how it sounds. It is a very powerful engine though, and what I like especially is that they haven't concentrated so much on the being bi-turbo, but it feels more like the power really comes up high, you know, so it's not like you're driving this torque monster that at 3,000-4,000 has had enough of it. Definitely the higher up you go in the ref range, the more reward it gives you for doing so. That's nice. That's makes it feel sporty. Furthermore, the thing about this drivetrain is also that the whole drivetrain, both the engine and the gearbox, from time to time make very weird noises. It's kind of part of this character, I guess. It's when you are stepping on the throttle lightly, for example, that you hear some very weird intake noise, very metallic sounding, dry sounding. So when you step on the throttle very, very lightly, on the gas very lightly, then you hear it, that it gives you this kind of very weird mechanical intake noise. But it doesn't sound like turbo noise, so it's just a weird Cadillac thing going on. And then the gearbox. The gearbox makes a weird sound when you are in a high gear but a low rev range. For example, you're 6th gear, around 1000 RPM, and then you press the minus pedal to do a downshift, and then you hear a weird electronic whiz coming from the gear stick, like the gear stick is actually sending the message to the gearbox that something needs to happen. It's very weird, but you only hear it in that kind of area of the ref range. So the other problem with the automatic gearbox is that when you're just driving along, especially in town, and for example you're going uphill, and so you've got your foot like on 20% throttle, it's when you push it a little bit the throttle that it does it, and then you give it a quick jump or quick dab of throttle to shoot past the junction, for example, then it shifts down and then it doesn't react because of that, and then by the time you needed the throttle, the situation is already over and you didn't accelerate at all. That's kind of a pity. So to conclude about the engine and the drivetrain, I said it already in the video on Spa-Francorchamps, I think a manual V8 would take this car to another level, but probably the manual with this V6 bi-turbo, yeah, so I think a manual with this V6 bi-turbo already would suit this car very well, because like I said, I wanted to say, the V6 bi-turbo suits the modern character of this car quite well. It has this kind of modern feeling to it with this engine, whereas the V8 would maybe make it into a muscle car, which I think is what they wanted to avoid. The electronics on this car, a bit where for me the most negative points are gathered by the Cadillac, because it's definitely a point that the Cadillac didn't invest their money on. The money was invested on the chassis, on the drivetrain, and the way this car handles and behaves, and that's obviously where this car excels. But the electronics, I mean, there are no LED headlights, which I do miss in the night. With this thing, you don't have the best light. You feel like you don't have the most modern light, let's put it like that. The sound installation, we've got the Bose installation in here. Not very good. It doesn't make it sound deep, or you don't get the spacious sound experience that you want from a upmarket sound installation. The steering wheel doesn't have a heater on it. That's a big pity for me. I really love that. When a car has a heated steering wheel, especially in the morning when you get in, and your hands have to touch something that's freezing, it's not so nice. We only have, wait, I'll tell you now, I'll check it. We only have the 5th of October now, and indicated temperature is, let me see if I can find that here in my board computer. Still haven't found it. Oh, 10 degrees. Here it says it on the navigation. It's 10 degrees out, so it's cold, and heat and steering wheel would bring this to a much more comfortable level. The rear view camera is the worst I have ever seen. This is a 2017 car. The rear view camera is worse than, I don't know, even a 2010 Range Rover had a better camera than this. Our E39 with the Chinese free camera with the that came with the navigation unit was better than this. So I don't know what they were doing. But it's bad. I mean, you can't see when you're backing up really, and it's not informational, so it might as well not be there. Then another thing, may be again just me that I can't find it, but I don't find how to do the auto folding mirrors. I selected it in the information center here. It should work when you lock the car, that the mirrors dip in. I live in a kind of a narrow street, so that would be useful, but it didn't work. Sadly, that's it for the electronics. I don't really have anything that was a positive point for our Cadillac here. It doesn't even have the auto sensing, rain sensing wipers. So you have to do it yourself, like in the 90s. In fact, not like in the 90s. Our E39 has it, so that's a lie. I would say like in the 80s. Good. Let's bring it on to the driving, where this Cadillac absolutely excels. It's a comfortable day-to-day cruiser if you want it to be, or it's a very well-sorted sports coupe. I wouldn't call it a sports car because it's not, it's just a little bit too big for that kind of title, but it is definitely a very well-sorted sports coupe. First of all, let's talk a bit about the brakes, because I can't get over how good they are. They are not monstrous and they don't lock up like you get in some of its competitors, but they are very well sorted. They feel tight, they slow you down like you're throwing a big anchor out the back, and you feel very, very safe because of it. Because sometimes, you know, the engine of the power is great and a corner comes and you just need to get rid of the speed, and it does it so well. And these wipers again. Anyway, then on to the chassis and the balance and the suspension. The suspension to me feels very good. Yesterday I went for a evening drive with my wife. She told me that you can feel all the individual wheels moving by itself. To me, it is busy, but it's not harsh. You know, it's not clattering along. Especially if it's like a single bump that it has to deal with. It literally goes over and then it's done. It's no. There's no shockwave. It doesn't feel too soft, like the suspension can't cope with it. So it's very nicely balanced that you can take it really by the scruff of its neck, throw it into a corner and it completely holds on, or that you drive around and small individual bumps don't really disturb it. If it's a bumpy road, like if there's many consecutive bumps, then it can get out of balance sometimes. For example, we've got a bad area in Luxembourg city where the road is being redone, and the intermediate asphalt that they put on top now is so bumpy. It's like a complete shockwave there, and sometimes when you drive over that, it really feels like, okay, I've given up, let's just go from one side to the other and bump over it. That's not very nice, but in normal driving I think it's superb. I drive it in Tour, that's the normal cruise mode, like I said before, most of the time, because in the other modes it gets more stiff, and that's not really so nice on the public road. The people from Cadillac told me to really try it in the track mode. It's really not my favorite, especially on the public road like this. It's just too harsh a bit, and it's a bit too aggressive. Furthermore, in Tour mode and in the normal sports modes, which I do like, it's already so good that you don't need the track mode on the road. The sport mode does make it a bit more bumpy, but everything else feels more alive too. What I also like about this car, it's one of these cars that doesn't have a dual personality, which people look for nowadays. It's just a Cadillac ATS-V. It can be either a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more sporty, but it's not like one time it's a Mercedes S-Class and the other time it's a Porsche 911. It's just a little bit more or a little bit less of the same character, so it doesn't feel so synthetic, you know, it doesn't feel so fake. What I often get in those cars that do that, like Jaguar F-Type is a good one that does that, or yeah, even the latest Porsche 911 does that as well. Then you feel like you're playing a PlayStation game and you're going through the different cars in the game, and you select one, then you go for a drive or like for a tour around the track. Then you come back into your menu, then you select another car and you go for another tour. So it feels completely fake in those cars. This one is just the same car, a little bit more, a little bit less, and that feels very, very nice. All in all, it's a very comfortable car. Only downside is that there is a lot of tire noise. Especially on the highway, if you get a little bit above the normal cruising speed, let's say, or if you're in Germany, it's the normal cruising speed. But anyway, so 140, 150 is where it gets loud in the cabin because of the tires. The tires are these very grippy Michelin tires that work very well with the chassis. Give you a lot of grip, and that's great about them, but they're a little bit too loud. What I don't like so much, still, I have to say it again. I probably said it earlier as well when I talked about the drivetrain, but the sound of the V6 bi-turbo, it's really not my favorite. It's a sound that maybe in this class does not belong. It's a sound that's a little bit cheap. It's not helped by the weird noises that the engine sometimes tends to make. My wife also said, she got in and we drove off, she said it sounds a little bit cheap, and that's exactly what it is. It sounds like an engine configuration that was just made because it had fit in the engine bay and not like it was made out of passion. It's a pity. I think it is the worst it is at either full throttle or very little throttle. If you give it like halfway, then it does burble a little bit. That's okay. It's not nice, I wouldn't call it nice, but it's okay for this type of car. But all the rest, yeah, it's kind of a turn off, you know. So you tend to drive it either just slowly not to hear it, or like you tend to drive it more like a cruiser, a fast cruiser, and you go from corner to corner fast without really braking and using the potential of the chassis but not of the engine, and that's a pity. I think it could have been more enjoyable if there was a different type of engine in it. And I said as well yesterday, we were discussing it in the office, the car, that it's not a car that I would go out just to go out for a drive in my Cadillac ATS-V. It's a very good car if you have a mission. Like yesterday night, I was cooking mashed potatoes, and I was missing the milk. We were out of milk at home, so I took the Cadillac. There were 10 minutes to go to the nearest petrol station because it was gonna close already, and I went there. The thing went like a rocket. But that's very nice. It's a very nice car to take on a mission. Like I said, you feel like James Bond with your whole center stack design and your gadgets in here, and that's a great feeling. But I don't think like Sunday afternoon, what shall we do? Let's go for a drive in the Cadillac. It would be more to go somewhere to see something, enjoy the countryside, but not to enjoy the Cadillac. So that's a real pity. I think that's what this class of car is about, but I don't think the Cadillac can really live up to that requirement. But I think if you buy this car as a car that you use for commuting every day, but you want something that's more sporty but also comfortable, then it's a real winner, because like I said, some other cars in this class, like the M3 and the M4, they feel not nice when you're doing that. They feel too much. The M3, M4 feels completely overpowered for a normal wet back road. This one feels very together, like I said on Spa as well. It feels like every component is set up to match the other component. So the steering matches the brakes match the engine. Everything feels very, very together, and that's, I think, something that's hard to find nowadays. And I think that makes it a winner. So it's a car you buy more with your brain than with your heart. It's not really a passion car, but it's a car for a duty. But it's a great car for a duty. So that's what it is. Thank you very much for watching. It is raining out. It's cold. It's wet. I'm no longer gonna get out of this car. I'm gonna continue my drive. We're going to continue our drive, and we're going to enjoy the last moments in it, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to catch you next time, and see you. Bye bye.